on target.
Almost there.
Stay on target.
Almost there.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Yakima On Target. I'm here with Yakima City Manager Cliff Moore. Thank you for joining me today, Cliff.
Appreciate the opportunity, Sean.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about government priorities and some of the budget issues and some of the challenges that we've faced the last couple of years. What do you see as the biggest challenges that we've faced in the last year or two?
Well, Sean, I think that you would, I'm not going to say anything that I don't think that it would be unexpected.
Right.
Certainly public safety is a major concern of ours. Homelessness and affordable housing has risen to the top of the issues that we're dealing with. Economic development and what we do with downtown and actually how we drive economic energy throughout the community is a very important piece of what council's involved in. And then long term, and something that I've been working on since I came here almost 3 years ago now, is fiscal sustainability.
Right.
We've had some challenges in the budget, as you've recognized. We've had an unfortunate habit in Yakima of balancing our budget by dipping into our reserves. And we simply cannot afford to do that any longer. We cannot afford to do that for several reasons, one of which is we need to have a healthy reserve to make sure that we can weather any emergency or disaster that might happen. We also, our credit rating is evaluated in part by the reserve that we have. You may be aware, I think folks that watch this may be aware that our credit rating was downgraded about a year ago, and in large part because we had been dipping into our reserves to balance our budget. The state law requires us to have a balanced budget. In other words, our revenues cannot exceed our expenditures.
Right.
When revenues have been struggling, as they have been in recent years, and expenditures are going up, by and large based on collective bargaining agreements we have with our unions that require us to meet the standards of increasing for cost of living adjustments and health insurance.
Right.
Our inflation has been 2.5% to 3% a year. Revenue hasn't been growing that fast, and so as we dip into reserves, we make ourselves vulnerable in a number of ways. So fiscal sustainability, in my mind as a city manager and one of my major responsibilities, that's a key priority as well.
And that affects us down the road. This can affect us for years. It affects our borrowing capability, right? And so as we bond things like street repairs and things like that, that's what this affects.
That's correct. It hopefully won't affect our ability to borrow money, to bond, but it affects the interest rate with which that we get when we borrow money. And every time our credit rating goes down, our interest rate goes up. And so we're working very hard to restore a AA bond rating so that our interest rate will go down as we borrow money, as you say, primarily for street improvement projects.
Now, what are some of the other challenges? The budget isn't the only challenge. We face a lot of challenges in our city. What are some of the other things we're looking at?
Well, certainly public safety is a major concern. We did have 17 homicides in Yakima in 2018. That's far too many for a city our size. We did have a spate, especially toward the end of the year, in armed robberies, and we are actively working on both of those issues. In fact, Interim Police Chief Gary Jones gave a presentation at council meeting just this week in which he talked about the opportunity that we've taken to go to a beat assignment for police officers. The same officers will be assigned to work in the same district for an extended period of time. It's kind of an old-fashioned approach, but it's also an approach that helps officers get to know the community and helps community members get to know the officers and build up some relationships, some trust and some opportunity. Boy, if there's somebody in your neighborhood that is acting suspiciously or that you think may be problematic, and you have a relationship with a police officer, and you say, hey, this gentleman or this person, it doesn't look like they belong here. Let's check it out. And so that helps. That helps it helps reduce crime, and it helps solve crimes when they happen. So I'm very pleased that we've been able to accommodate that shift change. Again, it'll start in the 1st of February, and we'll have those beat assignments. That's one approach really to community policing, which is one of the pillars of 21st century policing, which our council has adopted as a strategic priority. So public safety and ensuring that, that our residents here and our visitors are safe. They're able to walk the streets. They're able to go out in the evening, enjoy the amenities that we have here in Yakima. That's a huge priority.
And homelessness, you mentioned that also. So homelessness is an issue. It's been an issue for some time in Yakima. What are we doing to work on that, and where are we going with that?
Well, at this point in time, the city does have a lease agreement for a parcel of land near the wastewater treatment plant. And previously, Transform Yakima Together and now Sunrise Outreach is managing that lease, and they have set up a tent city, an encampment for homeless individuals. It's a low barrier encampment. People can come whatever state they're in, as long as they abide by the rules while they're there. That's a short-term fix. There are other longer-term fixes that are also happening in our community. Neighborhood Health is converting the old Roy's Market to a transitional housing location. There'll be about 40 beds there, so people that have been chronically homeless will have an opportunity to get some services and have a safe place to sleep at night with common cooking facilities and showers. The Armory project is moving forward under the auspices of the Housing Authority. That will take the old Armory on 16th and convert that to veterans housing for working with veterans who have been homeless when they return from their service. So those are two really good projects. Bicycle Apartments, an 80-unit apartment complex on 50th, is moving forward. A segment of those 80 units will be for chronically homeless, and some will be at low-income housing levels. So we're doing a lot of things to try to address homelessness on a number of different parallel tracks here in the community. In addition, Council has authorized a rezone for a 2.6 acre parcel just south of State Route 24 and east of the old Kmart parking lot, the U-Haul parking lot now. Right. The expectation long-term is that that will be a location where a permanent low-barrier shelter / transitional housing facility will be built. We don't have a project yet. We don't have an organization that we're working with. It's just very in the nascent stages, but we do have a commitment from community partners, including the county. The county is willing to put up some funding for that project as well. And we will be looking toward what we call the 2163 dollars. Those are dollars that are generated by recording real estate transactions. That funding in every county comes into the county and is used to provide homeless services. And so we'll be looking to that 2163 for both for capital and operational funding for a low barrier shelter or a transitional housing combination. So homelessness is very visible. Yeah. And when people don't have a place to live, we see them on the street, and it's been a challenge, and we have worked over the last couple of years to try to reduce that through the relationship with the nonprofit organizations to manage the encampment. But another component of homelessness or housing issues is affordable housing. Right. We have a dearth of affordable housing in our community. Yeah. Our Growth Management Act in the state of Washington does projections on population in every county. And in order to meet the growth projections for population in Yakima County, we should be averaging about 310 new housing starts every year in Yakima. The last few years we've been averaging about 180. So we're well short of housing stock that's newly developed housing stock to manage the population, to house the population that we have here and that is projected to come to Yakima. So we're behind the curve on new housing starts. I literally just came from a meeting with the Home Builders Association, and we talked about a number of the issues related to affordable housing, including infill and some opportunities for multifamily dwellings instead of only just single family dwellings, which can be more cost effective and efficient. And if you put up an apartment complex with 40 units, you generate a lot of dwelling units. And so we actually literally just came from that meeting and had some very positive conversation with home builders. So the homelessness is maybe the most visible, but affordable housing across the community is another issue that we're working on. And I would say then, on a perhaps a more positive side, economic development, continuing to provide opportunities for economic development in the community is something that council is very considered.
Jobs, creating jobs.
Correct. Yes.
For people.
And driving those new enterprises so that we can serve the needs of our local residents and also attract visitors. And one of the things that council just adopted in part of their new strategic plan is airport enhancement. And long term, we need to build a new terminal facility at the airport. And we want to do that through partnerships with other jurisdictions and likely the state. In fact, the State Aviation Caucus is chaired by Senator Honeyford, a real friend to our area here. So we're optimistic that having moved the airport into one of the strategic priorities for council will help us as we look towards generating some funding, because the airport's kind of the economic hub. People coming and going all the time, and we need to be focused on that. At the last council meeting, also, the council agreed to write a letter that opposes some federal regulatory changes related to freight rail. So much of our economy here in Yakima is driven by agriculture, and we need to ship our commodities out to the world.
Right.
And the first leg is often done by freight rail.
Right.
And if freight rail becomes more regulated and more expensive, it's going to impact all of the businesses in the agricultural area here in the valley. And so council wrote a letter to Senators Cantwell and Murray and Representative Newhouse opposing that new federal regulation that would essentially raise the cost of freight rail. So economic development is another area where council is very focused.
Now, were there any, there was a priorities strategy meeting just recently, a special meeting with the city council. You talked about some of those things. Were there any other topics that you brought up that were important to the city? 5
things that were on the strategic list last year remained on the list. Those are Main Street and arterial development, community policing, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier, the whole 21st century policing model,
right, yeah.
which is really engaging our community at a community level. Right. Safe routes to school with a focus on creating sidewalks and street improvements around our elementary school areas so kids can walk to school safely.
Pedestrian safety. Yeah.
Pedestrian safety. Youth development continues as a high priority for council, and this year in the 2019 budget, even though there were some significant reductions, there were a little increases for programming at the Henry Beauchamp Center and the Washington Fruit Community Center. So youth development and youth programming, another important strategic priority that remained from last year.
Right.
This year, homelessness and affordable housing was added as a priority because, I mean, it's just become something that we work on so much. Airport expansion, I mentioned as an economic development strategy, was added. Yeah. And then 2 things kind of changed, but are similar to last year. Last year, one of the strategic priorities was moving the possible Martin Luther King Park pool forward.
Right.
At the council meeting last Tuesday night, council did approve a consulting contract that will generate 3 prospective schematic designs and costs and operational expected operational costs as well. Right. So the MLK pool as a standalone kind of morphed into city facilities with a focus on all of our pools and our community centers.
To look at everything, to look at all of the services that we offer for those.
And again, that's a youth development, that's a community opportunity for family recreation.
And can be seniors, that seniors use
absolutely.
Our pool?
Seniors use Lions Pool quite a lot. I mean, they're there every morning. First thing, 5 in the morning, they're there, swimming their laps.
Very dedicated.
Yes. But both Lions Pool and Franklin Pool need some modernization. Yeah. So we'll be looking at, again, some consulting contracts to help us design how we would modernize and upgrade those facilities to last another 30 to 40 years. Right. And then the 2 community centers as well. And again, that supports the youth programming and community and family opportunities as well. So the MLK morphed to city facilities with a focus on pools and community centers. Right. And then the plaza was one of the priorities at the previous strategic plan.
Right.
That priority has
changed.
The ship has sailed.
Yes.
But still the notion of creating some sort of a downtown destination remained a high priority for council.
To bring people downtown.
To bring people downtown, yeah. and that might be an open air market. It might be, I mean, some people think that we should close Yakima Avenue from Front Street to Third Street and have a pedestrian mall. I mean, there are different ideas, and continuing to discuss that, evaluate proposals, look at opportunities for creating that downtown destination is.
And that's been an ongoing process for years. This isn't a new thing, new thing that we're talking about. Downtown redevelopment has been ongoing for decades.
Well, and this has driven the Plaza project itself, right. And maybe a pedestrian mall or other downtown destination ideas were driven by the 2013 master plan. So yeah. At the council's strategic planning session last Saturday, we also reviewed the 2013 master plan. Now, a number of those things have already happened. I mean, the whole beautification of Yakima Avenue, for example, right. is one of those.
Yeah.
The development, that we're moving on upgrading and updating North First Street was right. one of those downtown master plan yeah. Ideas as well. So some of those things have already happened, but still some haven't. And the notion of, again, a downtown destination is something that's high on their list.
Now, we've talked about a lot of stuff. Is there anything else that we should talk about? What else should we talk about today, Cliff?
Well, I haven't mentioned the mill site yet, and,
right.
and that's a project, the mill site in the east-west corridor, major infrastructure projects that are, again, part of the council's strategic plan. That project is moving forward right. With the help of our local legislative delegation and the county and federal funding. We have $115 million pulled together to develop the infrastructure, the east-west corridor, which will link eventually H Street all the way through the mill site, across the river, and out into the eastern part of the county. And then we'll connect from the roundabout by the Fair Avenue there yeah. Through the mill site. So that project will, once the infrastructure, the road and utility infrastructure, it has been completed in there, that will be a prime location for development in the community. And again, that's an economic development priority. The mill site's about 225 acres. It's the largest undeveloped contiguous piece of land with freeway frontage in the entire United States. So it's going to be
quite an asset to the community.
I mean, well said. It's a huge asset. Yeah. And the city and the county and the state are working together to build that infrastructure, and it's owned by private investors at this right. point in time. But obviously, once that infrastructure is in place, the development opportunities are going to be significant. Yeah. There are some covenants on that property, because of its history and some of the contamination that has been evident there, that we're actually working very hard on mitigating. We're not going to build housing right throughout the whole mill site area, perhaps on the perimeter, but it's mostly for business, for light industrial and commercial use. That's the intent. And again, freeway frontage, a lot of acreage, and a lot of opportunity for development.
To grow Yakima, it will help grow Yakima even more.
Yes, yes.
Any other legislative priorities? Anything else that is in the works there?
Yes, I mean, legislative session started this week, and as you're aware, it's a long 105-day biennial session, so it's going to be a very interesting session. Council did adopt a set of legislative priorities and actually met with our legislative delegation, most of them for breakfast in December. Mm-hmm. For our state legislative priorities, Council will be actively pursuing increased state funding to support local efforts for homelessness and affordable housing, looking to replace the 1% property tax revenue cap.
Right.
That's something that's been, a legislative priority for a number of sessions now. Right. Just as a quick aside, 30% of our unrestricted revenue comes from property tax.
Right.
Our unrestricted or general fund revenue supports police, fire, parks, some streets. So some of the major things that community members come to expect as services mm-hmm. provided by the by the city. When 30% of our revenue is capped at a 1% growth, and inflation is 2.5% or 3%, as I mentioned earlier, it makes it very difficult for revenue to keep up with inflation. So that has been a high priority for the Association of Washington Cities and the Washington State Association of Counties for 4 or 5 years now. Right. So that again is something that we're following. Last year there was a bill that was introduced. It got a hearing, committee hearing. It didn't make it out of committee. It didn't make it to the floor for a vote, but this year it's possible. We have 30% of all of our police calls in Yakima are related to domestic violence. And so we're looking at issues related to domestic violence and some funding to help the cities combat domestic violence. Just at the last council meeting, the council did give direction to staff to create a coordinated community response team. Part of the 2019 budget approval also included a new bilingual domestic violence advocate. That domestic violence advocate will be the convener and the coordinator of this community response team, and that's been proven through research to be a best practice for domestic violence. So some additional support from the state on domestic violence issues will be really important. Again, 30% of all of our police calls are related to domestic violence, and that's much higher than other communities in the state of our same size. Equitable distribution of marijuana revenue. This is this has become quite an issue. The state is earning about $1.5 million a day in marijuana excise tax revenue. So that's a huge amount of money. At the last legislative session, they agreed to share with cities and counties that allow marijuana retail sales $15 million. So we feel like, gosh, we're on the front lines of all of the permitting and planning issues that have to go into ensuring that a facility is appropriately evaluated and permitted, and then the ancillary issues of law enforcement and health issues as well. So we will continue to argue that the state needs to have a more equitable distribution of that marijuana revenue. Now, we understand, and if you follow state politics at all, you know the legislature this year is going to be challenged, and they're still not done with McCleary. Mental health issues are, we don't have enough mental health beds, and we don't have enough doctors to do competency evaluations, and so sometimes somebody gets arrested, they have a mental health issue, they spend an inordinate amount of time in jail waiting for a competency evaluation to determine whether they're able to stand trial or not. So the governor and the state legislature will be working on that as well. And then, of course, we got a very modest proviso last year, $150,000 to look at gun and gang violence issues. We'll continue to look at opportunities for funding, for a more permanent funding stream to help continue that effort, because that's something that we need to be working on. So, as I said, council members met with legislators. There were 2 new legislators from our area, Chris Corey and Jeremy Default, who were elected in last November. They were there at the breakfast meeting that we had with legislators, so that was very nice. And council will be going over, 4 members of council will be going over to Olympia in mid-February for City Ledge Days, and we will have a full slate of visits on the Hill with our legislators. There'll be sort of a month into the session, and we'll know what bills have dropped on the areas that we are focusing on, and we'll sign in to testify. We'll come and provide information about the impact of those bills on the city of Yakima. So we have a very good working relationship with our legislators. We're sorry to see Norm Johnson go. He was a great friend to the city of Yakima, as you know. But we're happy that we've been able to get to know Jeremy and Chris Corey real well. So we're looking forward to having their support as well.
Some active new blood in the legislature.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Anything else that we should touch on?
Well, I mean, we started this, and I should have thought. We don't need to just talk about our challenges or our problems or our issues. I'd like to just make sure that people are aware. I believe in Yakima. I think Yakima is a fantastic community. I think Yakima has a terrific upside.
Yeah.
And I'm so encouraged by some of the development that I've seen here in the last few years. I mean,
Well, construction is up. There's a lot of positive indicators.
Absolutely.
A lot of positive in Yakima. So.
Well, and and I've been working in and around Yakima for a long time. I worked for WSU in a previous career, and we had a learning center here, and I was the supervisor of all the 10 learning centers in the state, and so I was here in Yakima quite often. And that was in the early 1990s.
Right.
The difference between then and now, in my mind, is significant.
It is, yes.
I mean, the upgrades in infrastructure, streets. I mean, again, I mentioned Yakima Avenue. Yeah. Some of the development in and around downtown has been fantastic. So
activities. People say there's nothing to do in Yakima. I'm always doing something. I can't stay home.
I mean, I could be out at an event almost every night during the week, and so I guess what I want to say is, I believe in Yakima. I think Yakima is a community that is doing so many good things, and the upside is even better. I'm really encouraged also by the generation of 30-somethings that are either staying in Yakima or have been out and gone to college and had a job and are coming back because of the quality of life that we have here. I mean, we're almost 100,000 people, but it feels like a small town.
Yeah.
I never go to the grocery store on Saturday morning. I got to comb my hair and put on a shirt because I'm.
You might see somebody
I'm absolutely going to see
You
somebody.
probably will see somebody.
Yeah. So but I love that. It feels like a small town where everybody cares about each other and knows what you're doing and is happy to see you when they meet you in the grocery store on Saturday morning.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that has covered plenty of stuff, Cliff. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It was really fun.
Yes, thank you very much.
Great.
And we'll see you again on Yakima On Target.
I hope so.
To find out more information about the Yakima City Manager's Office or to contact the Yakima City Manager, Cliff Moore, call the City of Yakima Administration Department at 575-6040 or send an email to cliff.moore@yakimawa.gov.
Stay on target.
Almost there.
Stay on target.
Almost there.
For more information on YPAC programming, please call 575-6092.